Good morning from Chicago, Illinois. My name is Michael Kuehl, and I'm the president of Dynamic Ticket Solutions. I'm joined by my co-host, Josh Miller, station manager for the North Shore Scenic Railroad. Welcome to Tourist Railroad Connections, more important than ever, episode 7. As the pandemic continues to paralyze the world, and most important to everyone here, the tourist railroad industry, more than ever, we need meaningful connections. None of us have the right answers on how to navigate these uncharted waters. No one has ever dreamed of the scenarios that we now face. We're all working in the dark, using our gut instincts to make decisions and trying to keep our organizations afloat. Today, Josh and I, along with our panelists, will be furthering the conversation we started 6+ weeks ago. We do not have all the answers. We're not claiming to be experts. We're facilitating a conversation of ideas to help establish or reestablish connections. We would like to encourage you to participate in our discussion. On your screen, you should have a dialog box entitled Go to Webinar Control Panel. Within that box, you should have 2 sections. If you look at the bottom section, you should notice a gray bar labeled Questions, and below that, another white box that says Type Questions Here. Simply type in your question and either hit Return or the Send button, and we'll do our best to work your questions or comments into our conversation. In fact, I'd like to start that now and ask people if you could tell us if you're open or when you're planning to open, and we'll be able to tie that back into the conversation a little bit later. We've also made available recordings of past webinars. To access them, simply go to www.dynamicticketsolutions.com and click on the webinars link in the top navigation. So at this point, I'd like to turn things over to Josh.
Hello there. Thank you so much, Mike, for having me back again to co-host the show here with you. I'm pretty excited about today's show, and I'd like to welcome everybody who is watching. About 60 people are on here so far, and I'm pretty excited about engaging this conversation here with pretty VIP guest we have here today, Jim Wrinn, the editor of Trains Magazine, coming up in just a second. First, I wanted to talk a little bit about our webinars here. Again, Mike is in Chicago there. I'm Josh in Duluth, Minnesota. I work for the North Shore Scenic Railroad, which is owned by the Lake Superior Railroad Museum, and that is it behind me. I'm really here. That is not a fake green screen background. That is the William Crooks there behind me and the Lake Superior Railroad Museum. So I'd like to welcome you all up to Duluth, Minnesota for my part of this. I'm looking forward to starting our operation here on July 1st is our tentative date. So July 1st is what we're aiming for, opening train excursions in Duluth. So what is yours? When is your railroad operation opening? Again, please leave us that answer in the questions box there. You can leave questions. Comments are also nice too. We'll get the conversation going here as you can participate in this discussion as we get going. For the next hour here is how long this webinar lasts. We will be talking with Jim Wrinn, the editor of Trains Magazine, as it relates to the COVID-19 world, the heritage railroad operations, excursion trains. This webinar series is geared towards you, who is the management professionals of the heritage railroad industry, excursion railroads as we operate. We have managers and crew members from all across the country on the registration list. And one thing I think is really cool about these is we are talking to people in all regions of the country who do a very similar job of operating excursion railroads. And our discussion is how you can not have to invent the wheel on your own. And let's talk about what everybody else is doing as it relates to the current pandemic that we are in. Last week we had Roger Fearing, the president of the Railroad Passenger Car Alliance, RPCA, and Kristen Ayers from the Leadville, Colorado and Southern Railroad in Leadville, Colorado, who opened her operation on Memorial Day weekend. We had a great discussion, and again, I encourage you to go back and watch some of our previous webinar series there that Mike has put up on Dynamic Ticket Solutions website. And you just click on the webinars, you get to watch them. They're hosted, I think, on YouTube there, and you can watch some of those previous conversations. Again, this is a great time for managers like us of excursion railroads to be gathering a lot of information, and you don't have to write the book on COVID-19 as it relates to a railroad. A lot of other people are doing it for you or have done it for you. and it's your job just to translate some of that information into your own operation. And that is what we are here to talk about today. So we're going to talk to Jim Wrinn, editor of Trains Magazine. Jim, welcome to the show. So glad to have you here. A little bit of our agenda is just talking about trends and railroads in general, the difference between museums versus railroads, and then we'll talk a little bit about marketing, how to stay relevant, things like that. But I'm sure we'll stray off in a lot of different fun questions from our guests. Jim, again, welcome to the show. Tell us a little about yourself, kind of what you do for those who might not know of you. Of course, we know of Trains Magazine. Love the edition that just came out.
Hey, good morning, everybody, and sending good wishes to all my brothers and sisters out there in railway preservation. What you're doing is very important, and obviously this is not the exciting year that we all hoped that we would have. It's definitely exciting, but it's going to be a challenge. But I'm hoping that when we come to the end of it and things return to whatever normal looks like, that we can all say that we learned something, we all grew, and we all stayed in business, and things moved forward. And so I'm really excited about this. I'm excited about the discussions you guys have been having. I know just in talking to my friends who are in the business, they've all been hungry for some sort of ongoing dialogue about this. And I want to compliment Mark Ray and the Heritage Rail Alliance for their leadership in keeping this going and preparing some guidelines for reopening and their role in keeping the dialogue going. But my thanks to you, Josh, and to you, Michael, for hosting this venue, because it really is important, and it's it's something we all do need to talk about, and we all need to keep the thought process going and support each other and take care of each other and get through this. Just a little bit about myself. I've been a tourist railroad or museum customer now since I was 6 years old, and so this is very important to me on a personal scale, because it certainly was a great entrance for me to learn about railroading and to learn about history, and of course from there all of the myriad of topics that railroading involves: business and technology and engineering, politics, and everything. So it's one of the reasons why we love it. It's the reasons why we keep with it, and I was also just we love to share American history, and railroading is such a significant part of it. I started out as a volunteer at North Carolina Transportation Museum in Spencer 34 years ago, and I'm happy to say that I've done just about every job there possible. From cleaning up an old passenger car to operating the locomotives and being on the board. I'm currently a vice president, and it bothers me a lot not to be able to get my hands dirty there at Spencer on the weekends, because being here in Milwaukee, it's a little hard to do from 900 miles away, but I still support my guys there. I've also
interrupt there, Jim.
Go ahead.
One of my questions for you, which was kind of ironic, was how much you miss air travel, actually, just because it was easy to.
Do not miss air travel at all. Even though we do use it a lot, but no, air travel is not missed at all.
Sure.
But just a couple other notes.
Yeah.
Also was involved in the Nashville Steam Organization, and still serving as advisor to that one. That's the group that's restoring Nashville, Chattanooga, and St. Louis 576 to operation. And Trains has recently done something. We've done something in preservation of late. We've adopted the restoration of the steam locomotive 1309 at Western Maryland Scenic as the Steam the Last Baldwin campaign, and that has been going on now for 4 months, and I'm really happy to say that we've exceeded our goal. Our aim was to raise $100,000 to get the work restarted on that locomotive. We're up around 120,000 right now, and so we've increased the goal to 200,000. Work is resumed, And next week that engine will be reunited. The boiler and the running gear will be reunited, and so that's moving ahead. And so very happy to be involved in that.
Let's talk a little bit about Trains Magazine, and as editor, you're basically in charge of the editions coming out. And I'm pretty sure there was no delays as far as editions coming out during the shutdown. Is that right?
Right. Yeah, just a little bit about how we've responded. I was at a photo charter that we worked with the Nevada Northern to put on in early March, and flew home from Las Vegas on March the 9th, and I was in the office for about a week. And Wisconsin decided to go to a stay at safer at home order, and so our company set us all up for remote work at home, and we've been working at home ever since then. And I probably go into the office maybe once or twice a week to do tasks that I just can't do here, like photo research in our archive, or checking the mail, physical mail, or just reviewing like a payment copy or something like that. But all of our staffs have been set up for remote work, and we've been able to stay on deadline and keep things moving.
Nice.
And has not been a significant problem for us. So we've kept moving forward there, and yeah, it's been an interesting transition. Now that we're not all in the same room, we're using Outlook Teams to stay in touch with each other, and been going to a lot more Zoom meetings and other meetings like this with different groups like Center for Railroad Photography and Art. And I know Iowa chapter NRHS put on a good seminar the other day. And so, like I said, it's been interesting shifting to a virtual world.
For sure. It is certainly a transition. I think one thing that might be kind of good that comes out of this, though, is the ability for us all to work remotely in other locations. But so let's talk a little bit about Trains Magazine here, and we'll get into how this relates into the coronavirus pandemic that's going on. Trains and your perspective that you bring to this conversation is interesting, because up until now we've had a lot of conversation about just excursion railroads, and that's where we're going to generally stick to the conversation. But you're able to have a scope a little bit larger that Trains Magazine does a very good job of the entire trains industry is essentially what you cover. Growing up, I kind of remember trains being a little bit more focused on the industry of trains, and so you saw a lot of BN engines and stuff like that as the main topic. But now it really does include a lot of excursion railroads and heritage railroad operations, railroad museums, and information about that. So you have an interesting scope. In the recent edition too, you talked a little bit about how the pandemic was in the industry. What is kind of a general overall overview of railroads in general as they relate to the COVID-19 pandemic from your perspective?
Sure. Well, obviously everybody's been affected, and as you mentioned, our charge or our mission is everything railroading, and we've got a sister publication, Classic Trains, and their focus is on sort of what's called the classic era from the 20s through the 60s and now the 70s. But the Trains mission is to really do anything railroading, past, present, future, but obviously with emphasis on the current situation. And it's been interesting to see. No railroad has gone unaffected by the COVID virus. Everybody, the class 1 railroads, the short line railroads have seen significant traffic drops. There are some things that are moving, in greater volumes, or in normal volumes. Like I see a lot of fertilizer and potash moving on the CN here in Wisconsin where we are, and of course coal for power plants, things like that. But obviously automotive, auto parts, merchandise traffic, all that stuff is way down. Obviously Commuter railroads have had to adjust schedules, and obviously cleaning. Same thing with Amtrak. A lot different changes of operating procedures, cleaning procedures. But I don't think any one business has gone more affected than in railroading today. No business has been more affected by this than the tourist railroad and museum group, just because we rely on customers who come in to spend their leisure time, and so we're more of a disposable product there that you can cut out more easily, and it's been tough. But my whole thinking is Trains Magazine and the tourist railroad and museum business are very much the same. We're here to provide a service to our customers. Pardon me. We're here to provide a service to our customers, both their hearts and their heads. We're here to stimulate their intellectual side and impart information, but we're also here to feed their hearts and inspire them and give them something that they can look on with awe and enjoyment. And so in a lot of ways, what we do and what my friends in the tourist railroad business who are directly involved do is very similar in some regards. But I've obviously, having been involved in this most of my life, I'm obviously watching with great concern, because obviously the visitors are the lifeblood of every tourist railroad and museum, and the sooner we can get them back, the better off we all are.
Absolutely. Well, Mike, I want to encourage everybody watching here. We're 15 minutes or so into our conversation about the pandemic as it relates to the excursion railroad industry. We have editor of Trains Magazine, Jim Wrinn, here on the line. Mike, I'm going to turn to you and see if we have a question from the audience that we want to direct to Jim here.
We did. Scott McGee from the Yosemite Mountain Sugar Pine Railroad asked, is there any interest in expanding the preservation/museum coverage of the magazine?
That's interesting.
Well, if it was up to me, we would probably do more pages and pages. But as I said, we do try to keep a good mix, a good flow. I always tell everybody, if we have any editorial success during my tenure at Trains, it will be because we had a good kaleidoscope of coverage. It's sort of a rotating whirly-jig of material, and it encompasses everything from short lines and class ones to locomotives and tourist railroads and museums. Obviously, I would love to do more with it. We do quite a bit with it on our newswire, on our website at trainsmag.com. And because of my interest in tourist railroads and preservations, I do a lot of my blog posts on the Trains site
Sure.
about that. Last week we did a Q&A with Randy Babcock and Jeff Johnson at Durango and Silverton. Last night I put up a post which was another Q&A with Jeff Taylor at Colorado Railroad Museum about the restoration of RGS 20. So a lot of what doesn't necessarily make print, is there on the web and in more immediate form. But I will say, we do try to keep some preservation issues in the feature well of the magazine on a regular basis. Following my visit to Nevada Northern in March, I was struck with all the things that they do well about railroad preservation. And so I distilled those down into 5 items that I could sort of encapsulate. And so that's in that issue that you're holding up there, Josh, the July issue that just came out.
It is a great one, actually, and I did like that breakdown of kind of the important things.
It's a good reminder of some good basic practices that we should all be doing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, speaking of practices, let's talk a little bit about some of the things you may have heard from different excursion railroads that they're doing, and how they can charge forward here, get the doors open, and get guests into the buildings for the museums or the railroads in a safe way.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that strikes me is that, for years we've all been working to adhere to best museum practices. We've all been, those of us, those that are running, are obviously involved in best practices for, oh, my dog wants to say hello. Hello, Millie. Yep, this is Rail Dog Millie here, who goes out with me to take pictures of trains quite often. But we have to do with best practices of museums. We have to do with FRA regulations or state boiler regulations, and safety aspects and interpretation and all those things. And so I don't think any of us signed on to be public health experts. But now, we've got to get some not basic knowledge of that. And I think we're starting to see some of the leaders show us the way. If you watch airlines or other transportation businesses that are reopening, how they're reacting, or other entertainment venues. As I always say, watch these guys that get paid a lot more than I do to figure these problems out, like Disney and other places. But watch how they're doing. This morning I got a very insightful note from Strasburg Railroad talking about they're not ready to open yet because of state of Pennsylvania regulations, but they've already worked with their local state and local health department people to come up with the way that they plan to reopen when they do. So they're already getting that word out. And I think that's really smart, because now is a good time to be really visible and to let people know that either you're open or you're getting ready to reopen, or you're, at some point you will be back. Because I think your customers want to see you back. They look for you as a place of refuge. They're going to be looking for you as a place of refuge even more so now, because of what great work you guys do in railroad preservation, saving the American history that we all love, presenting it and demonstrating it. And the more that we can get out there and get ahead and let people know how your organization is preparing and getting ready and then executing it, the more they're going to be receptive to coming back and supporting.
Sure, absolutely. And what we're talking about there is, content creation of, starting to promote our businesses and things. I think the name of the game is to set a target time and date, and you can promote that, and people are understanding if you have to move it.
Right. I think the big issue for this year, a lot of places are going to be able to operate with reduced capacity trains. It may not make a tremendous amount of money, but at least it does get people out there and it gets people talking, so that whenever the trains can have a higher capacity, they'll fill up. The thing I worry about, of course, is the major events where we need volume. Like Thomas the Tank Engine and Polar Express and other events like that have high volumes. And of course, a lot of those are the big money makers for the year. And that is going to be a really tough thing, to have big groups together. Here in Milwaukee, one of our big annual events is a music festival that goes on for 2 weeks called Summerfest. It was originally rescheduled from early July to early September, and just this morning here in Milwaukee it was canceled. And so it's going to be tough for the big events that have a large volume of people. If you have a way to spread people out, you're going to be better off. But if you've got a small venue or a small footprint, it's going to be tough.
Well, one of the big things about those, and as they relate to our industry, is those large events are money makers that generally trigger tourist dollars tax dollars that
Yes.
generally then come back and support a lot of our operations. Looking forward into the next couple of years, I think there's going to be a little bit of a deficit as far as money that normally supports our organizations in terms of advertising dollars usually. That's not going to be there because there isn't the fund going into the city in order to re-promote. But that's almost another topic. You know, I think the large events that we operate, such as Day Out with Thomas here in Duluth, just got canceled. And, you know, I look at Day Out with Thomas not as a big money maker as much as a fundraiser for,
Right.
you know, the museum. Those are not big dollars that we're taking huge bonuses and running off and you know, taking winter vacations on. those are funds generated that go into restoration projects and cleanup projects and things like
Right.
that. And it is a little disheartening to have to watch some of those things get nixed from the list, whereas our operations, I think, can still stay strong. We still have to take the little clipboard out and go, I guess we're not going to restore that project this year. And, you know, that coach isn't going to get done or whatever, but, you know, we will prevail.
Yeah, those, you know, obviously, I don't think we have to tell anybody here, you know, those are the events that contribute significantly to the general operating budgets. And, you know, they're a significant chunk of what keeps these places operating every year. So, yeah, we're going to have to watch that really carefully.
For sure. Mike, I'm going to turn over to you here for questions from the audience. I want to remind everybody who is watching here that we have about a half hour left here with Jim Wrinn, editor of Trains Magazine. This is your chance to ask questions of Jim and the trains industry in general, but specifically focused as it relates to the pandemic and the shutdown of a lot of excursion railroads and railroad museums. Mike, general consensus from the audience in our poll asking when they're looking to reopen, and also if you have in the audience.
Well, actually, what was interesting, and thank you everybody for your responses. It's really kind of all over the place. There were a couple of railroads that have opened already. The East Troy Railroad Museum, Steve Thomas told us that. Travis Stevenson from Boone and Scenic Valley, they opened last weekend. Alan Camp from Branson Scenic Railroad, they opened yesterday. So there's a spattering that are open, but to be honest with you, looking over the list, it's all over the place from the middle of June to as far out as Labor Day. Peter Lips from the Berkshire Scenic Valley Railway Museum said Labor Day is when they're targeting to open up in Massachusetts. So really all over the place. And we also have a question from Marcus Roof, I believe is pronounced his last name, from IRM. He's asking, I'm sorry?
The Illinois Railroad Museum, just pronouncing. Wonderful place.
Okay.
Yes.
Got it. Before the pandemic, we understood that the greatest potential for growth in audience was attracting the non-rail fan public. As we were exploring ways to pique their interest in something they would ordinarily not think of, from your magazine's perspective, have you been considering ways to broaden its appeal?
Good question, Jim.
Well, you know, we're always trying to look for ways to you know, broaden out the audience while serving the core. And you know, we're always trying to think of ways that not only would hardcore railroad enthusiasts or preservationists be interested in it, but you know, people who study the business of railroading. You know, we want to be able to serve those customers. Just yesterday, I had the CEO of a railroad send me a note about one of Bill Stevens's recent columns about tracking freight car shipments in the same way that Amazon does. And he was very excited about that. And so we're very happy to have Bill. He's a good business angle columnist. You know, obviously, we want to try to serve as many people as we can who are interested in railroading, either casually or seriously. And it always pleases me to know whenever I run into some people at some of the trade shows, and they'll tell me, you know, trains was the way that I first learned about railroading, or it got me into the business. or Oscar Munoz over at United Airlines when he was at CSX. He came from outside the railroad industry, and before Oscar left, I got a very nice note from Oscar saying, you know, you helped me to understand railroading. And so, like I said, I think we want to try to be as accessible as we can to as many people as we can. Interestingly, one of the things that we always strive to work toward at trains is to keep it very conversational, so that it is accessible to as many people as possible. And given an industry that is so full of jargon, we work very hard to do that. But you know, still, periodically I get emails from people going, you know, what's CTC, or you know, what's an ABD brake valve or whatever, you know, and things like that. So you know, it's striking the right balance between being authoritative and being conversational. So we'll always be out there trying to do that. You may have noticed we show up in a lot of places now that we didn't, like Walmarts and Targets in the past. Of course, I always get excited whenever I'm traveling in Europe, because most of your major newsstands in Europe carry quite a few American magazines, and it's always fun to be in the depot in Frankfurt, Germany, and go into the newsstand and see Trains magazine there.
Sure, I would never have thought of that. But this is an interesting question that you know, really does pertain to, you know, how we market our business. And kind of a good transition point here is Trains magazine is struggling, or not struggling, but you know, your challenge, I guess, is how do you make this interesting for, you know, the Josh who's the manager of a railroad in Duluth, the kids who are, you know, just want to look at train pictures, and then the CEO guy who wants to know about tracking freight car shipments. And then you have to make it appeal to everyone. But similarly, we face that same challenge of how do I make, you know, the William Crook, you know, interesting for not just, you know, the old guy rail fans, but also for the families who, you know, just see that as not necessarily history, but just some old train. How do you make that relevant, and also to charge forward?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, whenever I'm having conversations with new authors, when we bring new authors on, you know, one of my pieces of advice is, you know, how is this going to be interesting to a reader in Portland, Maine versus a reader in Portland, Oregon? And you know, how is it going to be interesting to that breadth of people in between that? And you know, what are the why I should care angles? And again, I think it goes back to railway preservation. You know, we're always looking for the why you should care angle for those customers to help them understand that question, because the who, what, when, where are all easy, but the why is always the tough one, and it's always the most fulfilling one too, though. So I encourage everybody to go after that, and like I said, that's really going to be the way that we're going to stay relevant, is getting that why question answered.
Sure. Well, the extra challenge though being is how do you answer that why question in a marketing message? You know, it's easy when they're already here and reading the plaque, but they already paid admission. So, you know, the marketer has to figure out how to get them here to read the plaque, right?
Yep.
I guess that's a whole webinar in itself. Mike, questions from the audience?
Yeah, Evan Jensen from the North Carolina Railway Museum asks, is Trains magazine published in any other languages?
No, Trains is not published in other languages. We have looked into a Chinese edition, but because of their restrictions on freedom of the press, it makes it more difficult to do that, which is a real shame, because I'd love to be over there, because for two reasons. One, obviously it's one of the world's largest marketplaces, and number two, there's still a huge railway culture in China. One of our sister magazines, Astronomy, is licensed and published secondarily in South America in Portuguese. So it does have a second language, but we actually find that most of the English-speaking customers we have are across Europe and Australia, and we have pretty good circulation in South America, but for the most part, our customers are bilingual and they're willing to read English.
Sure, absolutely. Some definite challenges there as you go global with it. Mike, from the audience, we have a great post.
Yeah, Mark Graybill from the Georgetown Loop Railroad writes, Mike, Josh, the Georgetown Loop is opening tomorrow. Advanced ticket sales are taking off. Website traffic way up. We're thinking about 30% of last year for Saturday riders. And this is will be their opening weekend.
That's a really positive message here for everybody, really. That I guess hi to Mark, by the way, previous guest here on one of our previous webinars. Definitely back and watch his episode. And congratulations to the Georgetown Loop for getting things opened. Jim, one of my thoughts all along has been, as people are cooped up, how excited is the tourist for going out and experiencing railroad museums and railroads?
I hear about this from all the time from friends and just casual readers that contact us. They're eager. They're eager to get out and do something. They have been at home. Their home is now their office, and they don't have that change of venue every day. And they're eager to get out there. They're ready to go do something. They want to go do something fun. The Loop is a fantastic railroad. I've been out there many times over the last 30 years, and it's just one of my favorites. And it's in a great location, on I-80, just west of Denver, and it's a fantastic experience. And the customer experience is really great. So I congratulate Mark and all of his crew out there. And like I said, I see a lot of people eager to go out and do something. My videographer, Kevin Gillum, back in North Carolina, went out to Great Smoky Mountains Railroad today, where they ran their steam locomotive on a revenue passenger train today for the first time this year, just because he was eager to go. And I'm eager to go. I'm eager to get out someplace and enjoy a train ride or a venue. And I think it's a good time to let people know you're out there. Like I said, you're either preparing to open or you're opening, and how you're gonna welcome them, and how you're gonna make it a not only a fulfilling experience but a safe one as well.
Well, that is a great lead into this next question here from our audience, Mike from.
So Evan Jennings again from the North Carolina Railway Museum made a statement. It's apparent that there's a pent-up demand for any recreational educational activities. Each railroad is going to have to balance perhaps the large demand with social distancing. So
Jim, as that relates to our conversation here, it's exciting to think that, the Georgetown Loop, for example, is thinking just about 30% short of, where they were at last year. How do you then, as a manager who's not only concerned about making as much money as possible, also look another direction and say, wait, the safe way for this, for my crew, my staff, and my guests, is now to cap this or whatever you need to do in compliance with social distancing?
Right. We're all going to have to go and rely on our state and local health officials, for specific guidance. But there's going to be that frustrating cap that I see taking place, and I think there's, again, frustrating situations like this always lead to creative solutions. Is this a situation where okay, you can only have 25% of your customers in that museum or on that train? Can you extend the hours? Can you add more open air cars to that train so that there's more space to spread people out? Can you do something else with the customers to help them, enjoy their experience, while they're waiting for you to clean the train in between runs. So, there's going to be, there's the challenge of trying to figure out, what will be safe and what will be enjoyable, and coming up with that balance. I know at Spencer, the staff there came up with a transportation trail through the grounds, and we're very lucky there because there's 57 acres and 13 buildings, and it takes a while to go through all that, and it's an enjoyable experience. But it's going to be one-way traffic. None of the buildings will be open. You can't go in the exhibit halls, but you can at least walk around the grounds and through the roundhouse and see the rolling stock and things like that. So, like I said, there's going to be that tension. Years ago, when I was a younger man, I rode the mule trip to the bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Oh.
And I had a wonderful wrangler on that trip, a guy named Jack Campbell. And he looked at all of us and he said, we're going to balance safety and enjoyment on this trip, and we won't sacrifice one for the other. And that really struck me because, obviously riding a mule trip into the Grand Canyon is a strenuous activity, but a lot of fun, and you get to see it from a lot of cool venues on the back of that mule. But, you have to keep it safe too, because, you could obviously get hurt doing something like that too. So, balancing act and creativity is what I'm looking for as we all reopen.
Well, let's talk quick about that balancing act too. I think it's very easy to be extremely cautious as you open, and perhaps that's the right thing to do. However, there's the balance of how much do you need to do. Kristen Ayers last week from the Leadville, she's talking about they did a lot of practices that were great and they were really happy with, but then there was a lot of things that the customers just kind of ignored and just went about it by themselves. And overall, I think the vibe was that people were able to self-regulate a little bit, but then a lot of people just kind of ignored that, the line on the floor or whatever it may be.
Right. I'm seeing a lot of venues that are reopening saying that they're either asking people or requiring people to wear a mask. And
Sure.
That's going to be an interesting thing because how are you going to handle people that don't want to do the mask or that don't come with one? And I see a lot of venues say, hey, look, if you don't have one, we'll sell you one for $1. The really creative places I've already seen, I saw Wes Hines out at Maine Narrow Gauge. He's already come up with a Maine Narrow Gauge branded mask, and so that's really cool. And in fact, we're going to be rolling out a Trains magazine branded mask.
That'd be great. Yes.
With the Safety First logo, which is the tried and true railroad logo, here in a couple weeks. But it's gonna be interesting, and people are gonna have to have more staff out there to monitor the guests and help them, in a gentle but firm way, remind them what the rules are. And some of the guests are not gonna like it, and that's gonna make it tough on everybody. But I think the big thing is, this day and age, I always expect cameras to be everywhere, recording everything. So, if somebody's, misbehaving, or if there's somebody that's not, or if there's a venue that's not got things up to snuff, you can almost expect it's going to be out there somewhere, possibly on social media. And, the last thing we want to do is have people see something on there going, oh my gosh, this venue is not clean, or this venue is careless, or whatever. So, act as if everything is going to be photographed and recorded and shared, whether it is or not.
So to that, you say, err on the side of caution.
Err on the side of caution. And again, it's going to be tough, trying to help customers in a firm but kind way, to try to make sure that everybody adheres to the rules.
For sure. Let's talk a little bit about staffing and crewing. You know, I as a manager, you know, I'm hesitant to say I enjoy a higher unemployment rate, but it certainly means that I have a few more options as far as crewing my staff. As the one challenge though is that most of our operations rely heavily on volunteers. And we have a question here from the audience, Mike.
Yeah, Marcus Rofigan asked, have any volunteer museums experienced any reticence on the part of older volunteers to re-engage in the public short of an all clear?
I think the question is there, you know, a reservation amongst your volunteers, no matter what the governors are saying or what the guidelines are saying, or no matter what you say is, here's my business plan I've been put together in our new policies and procedures. I still rely on that volunteer conductor to come in and do the volunteer conductor job.
Yeah. Right.
You know, have you heard of any challenges of that being faced just yet?
I've heard that some places have their senior volunteers coming back on a little bit slower basis. Yes. And obviously, you know, the fact that, you know, we're dealing with a disease that is most harmful to our senior populations is tough two ways. You know, obviously the volunteers that are used and utilized, and obviously the customers. A lot of our customers fit into the age 60 and up venue. And so, yeah, it's going to be a little tougher to get those folks back. But again, I think, you know, doing your utmost to you know, have a good environment and a safe environment is going to work well. I ran into a friend of mine yesterday, and he was telling me that his girlfriend works for a retirement home. And they've had 0 cases of COVID-19, and they did not do anything extraordinary, but they practiced the good basics, you know, the face mask, the hand wash, and the social distancing. And you know, it's again going to be you know, tougher, I think, to get the older volunteers back in. But I think once things start to get a little bit better, I think, again, they're going to be like our customers. They're going to want to come back and do that thing at the Railroad Museum or the Tourist Railroad that fulfills them. I know there's not a lot that would stop me from, you know, wanting to go back and get my hands dirty at a museum or a tourist railroad.
Especially after being cooped up.
Kristen Fredrickson from the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum says, at the Pennsylvania Trolley Museum, about half of our volunteers and even smaller percentage of operating crew are willing to come back when we reopen. Staff job descriptions will have to be flexible for a while.
Yeah. So that's an interesting.
I could see that. Yeah.
Paid employees are going to have to pick up a little of that slack and perhaps don the conductor outfit for a bit.
You bet. You bet.
Well, we have about 10 minutes left here of our Railroad Connections webinar. We're here with Jim Wrinn, editor of Trains Magazine. Almost need no introduction, especially after last year. You know, you went on tour just the same with 4014. I think you saw quite a bit of the country just last year.
Yeah, it was a great experience. I'm glad we did it, and thank gosh the big boy debut was not this year, that it was last year, because that would have been certainly something. And you know, the reason that they're not running this year isn't because they can't or they don't want to. It is because the big boy attracts such a large crowd, and they felt like it would be a activity that they would a lot of people would frown on as they traveled the country. So yeah, amazing timing. If we've got a couple of seconds, I want to throw out a couple of pieces of news for us, if you don't mind.
Sure.
One, our longtime ad guy, Mike Uhas, retired at the beginning of April. And I told Mike, I said, look, Mike, you closed the office down. I mean, literally. He retired without setting foot back in the building. But in all seriousness, we'll make sure to celebrate Mike's career, because he was with Kalmbach for a long time,
Yeah.
almost 30 years. And a great guy, good friend. And we have a new ad rep now, a guy named Michael Wheelock. I don't know if you guys have run into Michael yet, but if you haven't, you will. And he's eager to help you with your packages. He emailed me last night about some sort of new program that advertising is going to do to try to help tourist railroads and museums. I don't know the details of it, but if you want to reach Mike, do that. I can forward your notes if you want to drop me an email. My email is editor@trainsmag.com, and I'll be glad to send those on to Michael. The other thing is we have begun a new part of our trips and tour business in the last few years. We've been partnering with different venues to do photo charters. And some of you guys are used to doing those. And, they're basically for the hardcore railroad photographer who wants to get some really good pictures beyond what they can get on a normal day. And we've partnered with several different venues. We've worked with Cumbres and Toltec, Oregon Coast Scenic, Grand Canyon, Cass Scenic Railroad, and they've turned out to be a lot of fun, and I think the railroads have enjoyed them, and obviously it's a area for profit for both organizations. So if you have interest in doing that, obviously drop me an email again to editor@trainsmag.com, and we'd love to talk to you about that. We've got one scheduled with Durango and Silverton right now for the end of August, and obviously we're kind of waiting to see how that all settles out, but we hope that we'll be able to go on this fall or late this summer, because again, I have a lot of people emailing me all the time going, I want to go do something this year, please don't cancel this event. And of course, it all depends on what Durango and Silverton can do. But they're obviously trying, they'd like to do it too, obviously, for obvious reasons. So we're all trying to do that.
Sounds like you're waiting that out a little bit.
Yeah, we're gonna keep selling through the end of June, and then make a call on it sometime late June, early July. But yeah, we're eager to do things with you guys. We're eager to get around to your venues and see all of you. And like I said, I'm eager to see all of this in a rear view mirror, and hopefully have better days ahead.
Jim, any words of wisdom for those out here who are trying to negotiate a almost no staff, empty building, empty offices, but they're there at their excursion railroad or museum and trying to figure out what things to focus your attention on today to get things reopened? Words of wisdom from the industry.
Keep the faith. Things will get better. Look for all your friends. Remind your local community, especially your business side of your community. Remind your local community what you do to make their community better. As far as a cultural attraction, a tourist attraction, remind them of the business that you bring to them. Look for friends. Keep networking as much as you possibly can. Like I said, get the word out that you're either open or about to reopen, or you have plans to reopen eventually on your social media. I see a lot of places. Josh, your Ken Bueller is doing a great job of giving people a tour around the museum. Keep showing different aspects of what you do. I see different organizations doing story time, or let's look at one of our artifacts. Those sorts of things. And like I said, just keep your visibility high in the ways that you can. It's a difficult time. It's a tough time. Boards of directors should all be active on fundraising, raising the money that is needed to keep the staff on and the doors open and the bills paid and the notes paid. Stan Brodsky at Railroad Museum of Pennsylvania 30 years ago taught me a wonderful axiom about boardsmanship. And he says there are 3 G's of boardsmanship: get money, give money, get money, or get off the board. And right now is a time for all boards of directors to be all hands on deck, raising money, working with the community, finding those matching grants, and really being active in fundraising.
And in some cases, the giving part is a key part of the being a board member as well.
Absolutely. You know, and I always remind board members, you know, it's not hard to do. You know, if you set up a PayPal donation on a recurring basis, you know, you can kick in $100 a month, and over the course of a year, you'll have donated over $1,000 to your organization. And not only board members can do that, but you know, anybody can do that. It's, you know, $100 a month. You know, stop your, you know, instead of going to Starbucks on the way to work, you know, make your coffee at home and send the $5 a day to your museum or your tourist railroad that you like. You know, remind people too. I also want to remind people that they can remind their customers there are other ways to support them. Shop with their gift shop online. You know, go make a donation, get a membership, give a membership. There are so many ways to do it, but the main thing is just remember, you guys are important. Like I said, you provide an emotional service to your customers. You're there and you make their day better. You brighten their day, you educate them, and you improve their lives by being there.
That was very nice. Thank you very much, Jim. That was some good words of wisdom to live by, and you know, things. I'm taking notes along the way here, and that's good stuff. Any closing thoughts here as we're wrapping up here for our discussion? I think you kind of got it all.
Hey, I just want to again send out a lot of support and a lot of love for the brothers and sisters out there in the vineyards of railway preservation. Keep doing what you're doing, and I look forward to seeing all of you somewhere.
Well, I certainly look forward to your next visit that you can make it up here for, and I really appreciate your time today, Jim, and joining us. Jim Wrinn, the editor of Trains Magazine. Definitely thank you for being here and participating in the conversation. And a reminder to everybody that Jim is an incredibly accessible person. He gave us out his email and everything else. If you have questions for him, definitely feel free to get in touch. Again, thanks for being here. I want to remind you, the viewer, go back and watch some of our previous episodes and webinars that we've been doing that are posted on the Dynamic Ticket Solutions page. Again, these conversations will continue because it is for the managers of railroad museums and operating railroad excursions. So you don't have to be alone in this mix, even though you might be alone in the building. And talk to other people doing the same thing, trying to navigate these same uncharted waters during the pandemic. And that's what we are here for in creating this conversation for. I'll turn it back over to our host, Mike Kuehl from Dynamic Ticket Solutions.
And again, I want to thank you, Jim and Josh. Thanks again. We hope you found this helpful and like to encourage your feedback. Our next webinar will be next Thursday at the same time. Besides continuing the conversation today, we'll be expanding our conversation to cover marketing. Next week's panelists will be Tom Hill, Vice President of Facilities and Marketing at the Georgetown Loop Railroad, and Carl Sagas, Agency Consultant for Sagas & Company. We'll be getting an invitation out before the end of the week, so please watch your email. Please feel free to share the invitation with people that you think might be able to benefit from our conversation. Let's all stay safe and stay connected.